Is it fair that as an employee you have to wait at least 2 weeks to get paid? Well, there's a bunch of new apps that give employees early wage access at a low cost. Sounds good? What's the catch? Ted and I are going to talk about it right now.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Ted, welcome back. Let's talk paychecks. So, are you surprised that a significant number of Canadians live paycheck to paycheck?
No surprise there whatsoever.
Does not shock you at all.
Nope.
So, off the top of your head, what do you think the normal pay frequency is for a typical employee in Canada?
That's probably every 2 weeks or semi-monthly.
So, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, it could also be weekly or monthly, I suppose, but companies aren't many companies that still pay monthly. There aren't many that have gone to weekly, although, an argument could be made.
We're going to talk about that.
I figured we would.
So if I get paid by the hour, my boss has to add up all my hours and then pay me. So they can't do it instantly. There's a bit of a time lag.
Right.
So you gave the example of someone getting paid every 2 weeks. That kind of makes sense. So let's say the pay period runs from Monday, February the 7th until Sunday, February the 20th, because that's how a pay period would run, right? It would be It would be a 2 week period. So if that's the case, what day is payday likely to be?
Well, so for many people, it would be that Friday, right? February the 25th.
So what that means is the hours that I worked on Monday the 7th, I'm not getting paid until Friday the 25th.
That's right.
Which would be 18 days, almost 3 weeks. Does that sound fair to you? Does that sound legit?
It sounds better than not getting paid for 5 weeks, because there are companies that you work your 2 weeks, then they process their payroll, and then they pay you the week after that.
Because you're in considerable arrears. And so that's in effect your first paycheck. You've got this 2 week delay, or
that's
maybe
even
up
worse.
To
That's right.
Up to a 3 week delay. So why is it then that we don't have as much weekly payroll? We have more of the bi-weekly and semi-monthly payroll.
Well, the argument in the past used to be just the cost, because you've got to process all this stuff. So it costs your employer money to process payroll, to put it together. They've got they used to have to print the damn checks themselves. Now almost everybody's using an automated service.
And do you have any idea how much it costs to produce payroll?
No, I have no idea how much it costs to produce.
I'm going to go ask Jennifer.
Of course you
wait
are.
Wait there.
Yes, right.
Stand by. I'm going to go ask Jennifer.
I should have brought my phone. I'm going to be here for a while, folks.
That's right. Stand by. There we go.
Just look at the little red light flashing at me. Oh, he's turned off my mic.
Here we go. Okay, I'm going to go ask Jennifer. Everybody follow me. Here we go. Jennifer, you got a minute?
Sure.
You got a microphone on right now so that I can ask you questions while you're sitting here at your desk. How often do we do payroll here at Hoyes Michalos?
We process payroll twice per month, so on the 15th and the 30th.
Okay, so if you're processing payroll for the 15th of the month, how much in advance would you have to process it?
Usually about 5 days, so the 10th of the month.
Okay, so how long does it physically take you to actually process the payroll? When you sit down at the computer, start typing in the numbers and everything, and let's assume it's an easy one where there haven't been any changes.
Because we're salary, I would say less than a half an hour.
And then what if there's a lot of changes, people coming and going, pay raises, whatnot? How long what's the maximum it could take you?
I would say 2 hours, between an hour and 2 hours.
And what is the cost of actually processing the payroll?
The provider that we use, they charge us $3 per employee.
There you go. Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Back to the office. Come on, here we go. I'm sure Ted's waiting for us. Did you miss me?
My mic's turned off. You'll never know. Well, now my mic is on.
There we go. Okay,
but I heard everything that was said.
So I went and asked Jennifer, and you heard what she was saying. She said that it costs $3 per employee.
Per payroll. Right?
Per payroll. And then obviously it takes time to produce the payroll. So what then is, that's kind of the reason why it's not done, right?
Right. Well, and then it's her time to do it as well. I heard her say half hour if it's a quick week or 2 hours if it's a long week. But that's part of the cost of processing payroll too. And we're lucky because all of our staff are on salary. So she doesn't have to go and input actual hours worked, or there's no time system.
Right. So why then what do you do if you're an employee then? And so we understand from the employer's point of view, it costs money to produce payroll. It takes time. So in theory, we could have daily payroll.
In theory, you could have daily payroll.
But as Jennifer said, it costs, it can take half an hour just to, get everything entered, and you got to do your validation and everything. And then the payroll service that we use charges a fee to run the batches, put the money in people's accounts. So if we were doing a daily payroll, you're looking at, $3 per employee per day. That would get pretty costly, and there'd be a time commitment to it.
The model would change completely because of the time value of money too.
Right. So if I'm an employee, though, and I have to wait between 2 and 4 or 5 weeks to get my pay.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Where am I going with this?
You're going to a damn payday loan company.
Exactly
aren't you?
right. Exactly right. And
anytime you want to push my
buttons, I
know,
know, and that's why I'm doing this. And you hate them because
the interest rates are just so obscene. It's just once you start borrowing from a payday loan company, you are stuck continually borrowing from them because the money's gone, right? I needed it before my pay comes. My pay comes in, they take their money back, and you're still short, so you got to go borrow from them again.
And so I've got to pay $15 on 100 here in Ontario. And so if I get an advance for, let's say it's the week before payday, I get $200. Right. I'm paying 15 times 2. That's $30, but I only borrowed 200. Yep. So you average that out annually. That's like 1,500% interest or some ridiculous number, which is, that's kind of a silly example to give because I've picked.
Well, the bigger problem is you needed $200 and you got to pay them back $230 out of your pay. So now you're short $230. And so probably before your next pay comes around, you got to go back and get at least another $200.
So we're in this never-ending cycle. Right. So what are you supposed to do as an employee? I need the cash. I only get paid every couple of weeks. But if I go and get a payday loan, I'm getting totally hammered on the cost.
Right.
So there is another option.
Apparently there is a new option.
And that's what we're going to talk about today. So it's called early wage access or on-demand pay. There really is no specific name for it yet because it's fairly new, and it's an app on your phone.
Right.
And so I'm going to explain this, and just for everyone who's watching, this is not a commercial for any of these people that I'm mentioning. They're not paying to be affiliate advertisers on the podcast. If they'd like to, then hey, we'll take your money.
There's no golf shirt in my mailbox.
No, there is not. This is research we've done because, of course, we don't accept advertisers here. So first one I want to talk about is called Dayforce Wallet. It sounds like Star Wars, but it's not. Dayforce Wallet, Ceridian offers it here in Canada. It launched in July of 2021, so it's less than a year old. Your employer must offer this service. So it's not something you can just sign up.
And obviously they got to be using Ceridian for their payroll.
Exactly right. This is a way for Ceridian, I guess, to have more employees or employers using them. So you download the app to your phone, you apply for a Dayforce MasterCard debit card. So you actually got this card. And when it's all set up, you go on the app, you see how much pay is available, you request it, and then boom, the cash is added to your Dayforce wallet, which you can then load onto your Dayforce MasterCard. And of course, you can use your Dayforce MasterCard wherever
MasterCard is accepted.
There you go.
There's your commercial.
Was also a commercial. MasterCard is also not paying us. And so you can add it to Apple Pay or Google Pay or Samsung Pay. I have no idea how any of those things work.
Right.
But the kids use them all the time.
Yep.
And so the best part for the employee is there are no fees.
Right. Yet.
Now, it is not clear to you and I who's paying for this.
Right. Where's the advantage here?
Because somebody has to be paying for it. But from what I understand from Ceridian's marketing material, which I'm sure is unbiased, is as an employer, I want to, retain employees, particularly employees who perhaps would move around a lot because of their pay situation. So this is a way for me to advance their pay a little bit. So retains the employees. I assume the employer must be, charged something for this service. And the MasterCard debit card, of course, when you use it, there is a fee that the retailer has to pay. Yep. So I believe Ceridian is getting that fee. So they do have a way to make money on that. And then, of course, if there's if you take cash out of the machine, then there's a couple of dollar charge for that. And international usage, you'd pay foreign exchange or whatever. So the app is continuously calculating your earned wages, net of taxes and deductions, and makes that available on the app. So, okay. That doesn't sound too horrific because you're not paying any fees on it. Let me give you a couple of worse examples.
Right.
There's one called Earnin, and these are both these are, I think, mostly American, so they're probably not even available in Canada. And they're not necessarily connected to your employer, so your employer doesn't have to be on side with this.
Okay.
So, sounds like a loan to me. But anyways, so with Earnin, users can leave a voluntary tip of no more than $14 on 100 when you take cash out. How much is the cost of a payday loan, Ted?
15 on 100.
That sounds kind of like that, doesn't it?
How many people actually would leave a voluntary tip?
Exactly. So you're probably going to leave nothing. They do also offer overdraft protection. If you set up recurring automatic payments, they do charge you for that, $1.50 on 100. So if you borrow $100 7 days before payday and you tip $2 instead of, the bigger number, well, your APR is still huge.
Right.
That's a big number. There's another one called Dave.
Of course it is.
Like the guy's name. Banking for Humans. They charge a $1 monthly subscription fee, which you can opt out of on the app.
Okay.
And then it's between $1.99 and $6 to get your money faster. Fees vary based on the
depending
loan
on how much you're
amount.
taking. Yeah,
exactly.
Okay.
And then there's an optional tip of up to 20% of the amount borrowed. Again, I'm not sure why anyone would be doing that. So if you borrow $100 7 days before you get your next paycheck, pay a $6 express fee, the monthly $1 subscription fee, and add a $1 tip, it'll cost you $8 to borrow the 100. So that's still a pretty high APR, I guess 400% if you were to average it out over the year.
Right.
So that's the background. Let's start with the obvious advantages here. And let's start with the Dayforce one, the Ceridian one, where there are no fees.
All right. Well, so you're not paying the $15 on the 100 for the loan.
And
every 2 weeks.
Clearly it's better than a payday loan then.
Right, clearly.
Because you're not paying. So I guess our advice is, well, if you got a choice between a payday loan and this thing, then that would kind of make sense.
Right.
But you already kind of addressed one of your minor objections to this. So what is the problem with getting $200 now?
You don't have it when your pay actually comes in.
There you go.
And so you've screwed up the whole budgeting system by saying, okay, I'm going to base my budget on when I get paid. And now you're moving some of those payments forward so the budget falls apart.
So if I had an expense that I was going to be paying 3 days from now and I get the cash today, I guess, okay, I'm kind of indifferent. But I'm trying to think, what kind of expense would that be that I couldn't delay for 3 days?
It's when your pay frequencies are, but oftentimes when people set up monthly payment plans, they don't look and set them up on their pay frequencies. They set them up on whatever day it is they sign the contract. So I have to pay my, furniture loan. My phone bill gets paid every month on the 10th because that's when Bell tells me I got to pay. I get paid on the 10th once a year. Every other time I've got to have the money in advance, or if I'm short, I do one of these quick little loans, I guess. Yeah,
so I agree. You're kicking the can down the road is all you're doing. So now you're going to, I got the cash today, but then I've got less cash on payday. And I think it probably also gives you a false sense of how much cash you have available.
Right.
Because I'm used to getting my payday or getting my paycheck on Friday. Well, it's going to be a less number. I'm not actually getting as much as I thought I was going to get.
Right.
You just got it earlier. So I would assume as well, you're probably less inclined to be focusing on building up an emergency fund.
Well, presumably you can't build an emergency fund if you're borrowing from your paycheck early.
So that's another problem.
Right.
So, okay, those are the kind of minor technical issues, but I mean, what's the bigger problem here? What's the real problem with why people are using these things?
Well, because cash is king. You got to have cash to pay your bills, so you've got to structure your payment plans to match your income. If you're moving it forward and advancing it, the whole budget thing will fall apart.
Yeah, you're living paycheck to paycheck,
right?
And which is the problem then is what is the problem? The problem is I don't have enough income coming in to meet my expenses
when they're due.
So that is the real problem. That's not the symptom of the problem.
Right.
And so what this early access pay thing is doing is treating the symptom, which is I don't have the cash today, but it's not treating the underlying problem, which is there isn't enough cash coming in to deal with this. And I mean, you and I talk to people every day. We understand it's tough out there.
Oh, yeah, these days tougher than ever.
I mean, our average client, so that's someone who comes into Hoyes Michalos and files a consumer proposal or bankruptcy, has monthly take-home pay of $2,600.
Right.
And that's less than it was the year before.
Sure. And make sure you understand, folks, that's their after-tax income. That's what they got in their hands to actually pay their bills.
And living costs are going up.
Always. I mean, geez, the cost of gas these days and the grocery store.
Everything. And their debts are going up because they don't have enough cash coming in. And so the amount you're paying on your debts is also going up. And and I think this is important. You and I are going to do a show next week, and we're going to talk more in detail about what it is like to be that person who is living paycheck to paycheck and is constantly just can't keep up. And so we'll, tune in episode 390 next week. We'll talk in more deal about that. And we'll actually go through some of the numbers, because when you say $2,600 a month is what people have coming in, well, what does that mean? Well, how much is your rent? How much is your groceries? I mean, that's how you can see how constrained it actually is. So the point is, it's tough out there. Cash is tight.
Right.
So I guess it would be great if employers would go back to weekly paychecks or daily paychecks, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, you could make the argument for weekly, but the government would never pass a law forcing that, because how do we pay our seniors? Monthly. The government should switch the seniors to at least semi-monthly or bi-weekly so that they could budget easier.
That's a very good point. Why is it that Canada Pension and OAS are monthly?
Right. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Because it's easier for the government to process once a month rather than bi-weekly or weekly.
And they're sitting on the money for 30 days instead of 2 weeks. I mean, they're borrowed money anyway, so an argument could be made they'd be better off to do it shorter periods because they're borrowing smaller amounts, but you're paying interest sooner.
Yeah, so it's just not going to change. And from the employer's point of view, and you and I are employers.
Yep.
As Jennifer explained to us, well, there is a time cost to produce a payroll run, and there is a actual transaction cost.
Yep.
And I mean, back in the old days, I remember when we started, we actually wrote paychecks. They were actual checks that we gave to people.
Not to you and me.
Not to but I think we got to like 4 employees and we said, forget that. We're going electronic. But there is a cost to do it. So, okay, the problem then is I don't have enough cash coming in based on what my income and expenses are. So I guess the answer is, well, there's only 2 answers. You got to increase your income or you got to reduce your expenses.
That's right.
And it's real easy for us to sit here on this podcast and say, well, you got to increase your income.
You've gotten used to eating? Well, give it up for a week. That's right.
But you and I we have this conversation with people every single day.
Right.
And what we do is we start by saying, well, write down everything you spend money on. Let's actually take a look at it.
Because most people don't do that. They don't know that they're spending, $30 a week going to Timmy's or Starbucks.
Right. And so, is there a way I can shrink my costs even a little bit and as a result free up more cash? And again, it's easy for us to say that sitting here, well, just cut your expenses.
Right.
But if you write them all down, you start to see, well, okay, so Netflix, okay, that's important, but do I need to subscribe to Netflix 12 months of the year? Or can I just binge watch it? Because there's only the same shows over and over, right?
And Netflix has just raised their prices recently.
Oh, have they? Great. Yes. Fantastic. And so has Amazon Prime, I believe, too.
I believe you're right. Yep.
So I've got a lot of clients who it's like, well, okay, I'm going to have Netflix for 2 months, watch everything, cancel it, go to the next streaming service, watch that for 2 months, flip it over. Because it's not like there's, on most of them, a regular show that you're watching every week, right?
Nobody watches regular shows anymore.
No, it's not a thing. So it's digging right into the details and looking at what you can cut. There's a lot of people now who don't have a home phone.
Right.
Because who calls you at home? Telemarketers.
Yep.
So I don't really need that as much. So cars, again, are a huge one.
Yep.
Not easy when you live in a town that is not, doesn't have a subway. So getting around Guelph, well, yeah, sure, there's a bus service, but it's not as easy. So I think that's the first thing. The other thing I'm noticing, and you tell me if you're seeing this or not, I've got a lot of clients who are switching jobs.
Oh, sure.
Because they've been at the same job for forever. Mm-hmm. And if you're at the same job forever, your pay doesn't tend to increase.
You get cost of livings for most places.
And that's about it. So I've even had clients in the retail world who can go to that store across the street and see a big increase in pay. So number one question, is that something to consider? And number two, what's the downside to thinking about that?
Well, I mean, the downside to switching jobs is that you lose some security. If you've been with the same people forever, they probably love you. It's a routine you're very comfortable with. So everything, it just happens. You switch to a new job, you get more pay, but now you got to learn the new system. You've got to, again, you're on probation probably the first 3 to 6 months. So there's some risks involved. That's all.
Yeah. And so what are the kind of questions you should be asking? I guess the first one is, what kind of hours am I actually going to get here?
Right.
Because you're telling me I'm going to get my 40 hours. But then, we're a little short today.
And how flexible the hour is going to be. If you've been someplace for 10 years, you probably got some seniority. You know exactly how the vacation works. And if I got to skip out 2 hours early to go see the doctor, they're probably okay with it. The new place may not do any of that.
Yeah, I talked to somebody in the healthcare world last week who has been offered another job. He's been at this place for 10 years. He's working Monday to Friday.
Right.
The new job, well, no, you're doing
back to weekends.
Saturday, Sunday, you got the evening shift, whatever. But I am amazed at how many people are bouncing jobs now because the opportunity is there. So I agree with you. It's certainly something to consider, but you got to understand the pros and cons to do it.
Well, you got to, like any other major decision, think it through. Don't just say, okay, 20% more money, that's great. There's always a cost.
So let's wrap this up.
Oh, you want to go back to the first thing we were talking about?
Well, so how do I decide then whether I should be taking one of these early access pay advances? What's the thought process I should go through?
So let's make this the simplest way. If you've got to have the cash, then that's a much better alternative than a payday loan. It sounds like it's a better alternative than even using your overdraft at the bank. The issue is you can't use this as a long-term strategy. So if you've got to do it once, it's an emergency, I get it. But if you have to do this over and over and over again, there's an underlying problem that you got to address.
And I think you always have to focus as well on what's the cost.
Right.
So,
well, and I'm happy to make a prediction there. So right now, this is a free service from Surety, and I bet once they get sufficient demand, they've worked all the bugs out of it, that there will be a cost.
And we were pretty vague at the start of this show about how it worked.
Because we don't know.
Because we don't know.
Right.
So what are we missing here? Like, obviously, nothing can be offered for free. So is it as simple as, the employer is willing to do this for employee retention? And I just did say a lot of people are moving around.
Yeah, maybe.
So maybe that is the answer. But how, if I'm getting a pay advance 5 days before payday, the money isn't there yet.
Right.
Because as an employer, I mean, we heard Jennifer say it, that we process the payroll roughly 5 days before payday, which means the payroll company is taking the money out of my bank account as the employer roughly 3 days before payday.
That's right. And so one of the ways they make money is sitting on that pay for the 2 days before they have to issue it. But if they're going to be loaning some of it out now, it's a reduced pie.
Yeah, and that's a massive float.
Right.
Because if, the company's payroll is $100,000 and the payroll service has hundreds of employees, they quite literally could have millions of dollars in their bank account on any given day.
Yep.
And even if you're doing just the overnight T-bills or whatever, I mean, I guess if you got, you would know this, you have hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hundreds of millions.
You can get more than 0% on an overnight rate.
You can.
So you're right. The payroll company is losing that.
Well, they had to pay somebody to develop this product, right? So there was a significant programming. They're setting up the MasterCard system that they're going to dump this money into. Then there's actually monitoring and controlling those MasterCards. So this is a subsidiary that they've attached to their payroll service that's somehow got to generate profits. And you pointed out that they're going to get paid transaction fees on the credit cards. Okay, so what's that, 2% on a MasterCard probably? Mm-hmm. That's not enough to justify this. So at some point, there's going to be a fee.
Yeah, it's the only way it can possibly work. And I also don't understand then as the employer, if someone wants to get their pay a week early, well, I haven't transferred the biweekly payroll to the company yet, so I'm going to have to be transferring it early.
Yeah, and I don't see that happening.
And how does that work exactly? So I'm getting, somebody goes onto the app and says, I'd like $200 because I've earned it. So then as the employer, I have to go in and transfer the money, or it's going to automatically come out of my account. And then, I don't know. I don't understand how this works. So maybe the payroll company is financing it, but again, they're not financing it if it's no charge.
Financing it for free. That's not how they make money.
So we don't understand how this works. So those of you who are watching on YouTube, leave a comment and explain to us what we don't know.
We are skeptical.
Because clearly we aren't getting it. But I think you just used the perfect word, skeptical.
Right.
How does it work? What am I paying? Now, those other ones I mentioned where there's clearly a fee, I'd be staying away from those.
Any financial service that's got my first name as the name of
it,
I would stay away from.
Unless it was Doug.
What did Groucho Marx say? I wouldn't want to be a member of a club. Anyone would have me a member.
There you go. So we are skeptical is what we're saying. So that's how we would do the analysis. What does it cost? What's my benefit? What are my other options? And you decide from there.
Right.
Ted, we made more confusion than we probably eliminated here, but at least it's a thing that is out there and we wanted people to be aware of it. Thank you very much for being here today.
See you next week.
Next week, we're going to go into a lot of detail on the specifics of how, what people look like when they get into trouble. So stay tuned for that. So that is our show for today. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was debt-free in 30. And in fact, 25.
There you go.
Quicker than usual. So there you go.
All right.
Okay, so
Am I going to need the whole study?
no, I've got the condensed.